Judicial Service Commission has now confirmed it will hold the interviews for the candidates who've been nominated to be Chief Justice from the 1st to the 5th of February. 4 people have been nominated for the position. The Supreme Court of Appeal Judge President Mandisa Maya, Constitutional Court Judge Mbuyiseli Madlanga, Deputy Chief Justice Raymond Zondo, and the North Gauteng High Court Judge Dunstan Mlamblo. Alison Tillies with the organisation Judges Matter. Alison, good afternoon to you. So finally we have a date from the JSC. Still quite a while before the interviews actually happen, still 2 months away.
Yes, it's surprising. It's not what we thought was originally envisaged, where the President would have a process and then send names to the JSC, and the JSC would then interview them. The JSC seemed to have understood the process to involve them repeating that process with calling for comments, asking the candidates to fill in the forms, and then only interviewing next year into February, which is really, really late.
So the public gets another chance to comment after already commenting in the previous process?
You know, the JSC has a process. Perhaps it's just applying it in this instance as well, perhaps without necessarily thinking about the fact that this is a process that has already been run. It does mean that we're looking at another 4 months potentially before an appointment, 3 to 4 months, and that's a very long time to leave the court without a permanent Chief Justice.
Well, there are all sorts of things facing the judiciary at the moment. It means that there may not be some direction for quite some time, despite these challenges.
Well, I think the other thing that we're concerned about is the absence of appointments to the other positions. Justices Kampepe, Jafta, and Froneman still have to be their replacements have to be announced. There were interviews in April. We know that didn't go well. The interviews were repeated in October. We're now well beyond the October interviews. So that's another round of appointments that seem to have been delayed.
It seems the President, I don't know, has he lost control of the process in some way, perhaps? I mean, it seems that he's just sitting on it.
It's difficult to know what the delay is. The general rule has been that there's been quite a quick turnaround time from the presidency when the nominations are sent through. So we don't know why there's been a delay in this case, but given the number of extremely important cases that may be heading towards the Constitutional Court, and I mean vaccine mandates, one that's been discussed a lot, all you need is an application for direct access on the constitutionality of vaccine mandates, and we'll be looking at a court sitting with 4 judges down.
Sure. I think, in fact, we might already have seen some of those papers being prepared. The Judicial Service Commission, when they have their conversation, when they have their interview process in February next year, it's going to be quite a strange proceeding. We've never had 4 candidates for one position before in terms of the Chief Justice. It's going to be in public. We've seen these hearings, well, how do I put it, descend into politics before. Are you worried that could happen again?
I think there were very particular circumstances in the round, certainly where that was most prominent, where the former Deputy Chief Justice, then on behalf of the JSC, spoke at length to the candidate who was Judge Mahweng at the time. And that certainly was far too long and created a great deal of acrimony. One of the things that may help, and it's something we've been arguing for, is for the JSC to think about the criteria that they're looking for in the incoming Chief Justice, and really try to focus the questions around how the candidates match up to criteria that they've already thought through and articulated. So rather than simply embarking on a fishing expedition, that they have really a thought-through line of questioning which relates to all of the candidates, and that each candidate then gets an opportunity to, put their views on whether it's the administration of the court or, what the most important challenges are facing the court as a group of jurists. I mean, whatever the questions are, that they're lined up and that's the focus rather than the personalities in the room.
So normally the Chief Justice chairs Judicial Service Commission meetings and interviews, but there is no Chief Justice. Then the Deputy Chief Justice would chair it. But in this case, the Deputy Chief Justice, Raymond Zondo, he's the acting Chief Justice now, has been nominated, which means he can't do it. So that would normally, if I've got my history correct here, I think take us to the President of the Supreme Court of Appeal. But the President of the Supreme Court of Appeal, Judge Mandisa Maya, is also a nominee. So, Alison, scratching my head here, if all of that's the case, who chairs these meetings? Would it be, I don't know, the most experienced head of a provincial court?
No, in this instance, the press release tells us that it's going to be Judge Petse, who is the Deputy President in the Supreme Court of Appeal. And that we just have to hope that nothing, that there's absolutely nothing that happens to Judge Petse between now and the interviews. It's I think an indication of how strong the candidates are in a way, because you have your most senior judges all being involved in being put forward for those positions. So in some way, I think it's a good sign. But of course, it's a difficult process, and it's going to be contentious, and it does need to be held together by a really strong chair, and that's certainly something that Justice Petse would provide.
And I mean, in a way, the legitimacy of the Judicial Service Commission after what happened the last time where the interviews had to be held again, I mean, in a way, the legitimacy of the JSC is going to be under the scrutiny here, whether they like it or not.
Yes, and I think they are aware of the fact that there are these questions about how they conduct their interviews and what criteria they use. And they are, I think, certainly from some members of the JSC and Advocate Mpofu in particular has expressed himself on this, that there could well be a discussion about, for example, the transformational criteria that the JSC is thinking about, and whether that could perhaps relate to some of the grounds of discrimination that are set out in the Constitution and in the legislation dealing with equality. And that's an interesting idea, but I think there's always this pushback. We don't want to ask the same questions of different candidates. We want free rein and be able to ask anything of any candidate. And I think that's just not a valid premise. It's not the correct approach in terms of these interviews. Candidates must be given a fair opportunity to express themselves on the most important criteria that are expressed by the JSC. But we'll certainly see in the next while whether the JSC has a conversation about that internally and or externally.
Alison Tilly, thanks very much indeed. Really do appreciate it. From the organisation Judges Matter.